Welcome to this podcast, which is integrated in the project StudioStar within the framework of the Council of Europe's Platform for Youth Centers. It aims to promote human rights among young people, to share perspectives on issues related with human rights by appealing to the initiative and creativity of young people. Thanks to the Lisbon Youth Center from Portuguese Institute of Sport and Youth for this opportunity to share and debate our opinions and experiences about freedom of expression. My name is Filipa Bento. I'm from an association called All Aboard. We mainly work through skateboarding, and our aim is to promote skateboarding to everyone. Women, men, children, people with disabilities, you name it. Our goal is really to rehabilitate and promote equal rights and equality of opportunities to everyone involved. With me, I have Patricia and Diogo, and they will, of course, introduce themselves.
Go for it.
So, hello, my name is Patricia. I'm from a youth association called Lifeshaker, which is in Almada, the south side of the river, next to Lisbon. We work mainly in two objectives. The first one is to assure an equitative education to children and young people with fewer opportunities. And the second one is to assure them fair employment and economic growth. We aim to create opportunities to create a better world for each young people and with every young people. And to do that, we have several projects implemented in the community and also in some schools that are our partners. And also here in the Youth Lisbon Center, where we can have some activities related to human rights, freedom of expression, between others.
That's nice. My work is so much less relevant comparing to yours. You do really nice thing for community. Well, I'm a comedian. I'm Diogo Faro. I'm a comedian, and try to be an activist sometimes, or at least to use my comedian voice or as a public figure to do something for the community as well, but in concerning about human rights, or more recently or this year I've been really involved in fighting this housing crisis that is huge in Portugal, through comedy or other actions. I in the beginning of the year I was doing some humoristic videos about the housing crisis, but then I started to receive a lot of really testimonials and stories, really sad stories about these conditions of people, and that's why I talked with some friends, and then we started this collective, I don't know how to call it in English, but like this group of action that is called Housing is a Right. And since then we joined forces with so much other collectives and associations, everything, and we've been involved in the two big strikes that we had, like 1st of April and now 30 of September, and doing most of what we can to try to fight this because it's really awful what's happening in Portugal. That's it.
I mean, I think we could maybe discuss what's freedom of speech regarding our activities and our programs and the way we work. I don't know if you want to start. Yeah.
Yeah, for
How
sure.
how do you work freedom of speech? How do you work freedom of expression in what you do on a daily
Yeah.
basis?
Well, for me, freedom of expression and of speech is totally related with other kind of skills, because it's very difficult for you to have freedom of speech if you can't understand what other people are saying, if you can't establish an opinion because you don't have the literacy to do it. So for me, first, you need to empower people and give them the things you call soft skills. I prefer to call them like social emotional skills, in order for them to be able to express their opinion in the subject. So for me, this is the first step. So starting with children, empower them with social emotional learning, making them developing critical thinking, and then apart from that path, yes, they can have the freedom of expression in a conscious way and knowing exactly what they are saying and also understanding what others are saying, politicals, their peers, whoever we are talking about. So for me, this is the first step, and it's what we are attempting to do.
I think that's an interesting view, and honestly, for me, freedom of speech or expression, sometimes people think that it's only related to verbal manifestation, but to be someone, to express yourself in the way you dress, in the way you behave, in the way you act around others, is also a freedom of expression, a freedom of speech. And I don't really think that one can go without the other. So for us in All Aboard, it has a lot to do with being your genuine self. And it happens that our team, for instance, sometimes we notice that we are a group of people that is not very maybe integrated in society, perceived as the normal society. And that happens a lot also with people with disabilities, with minorities, ethnic minorities.
Exactly.
So to be free, it has to come with the freedom of expression to be yourself and to act the way you want to act, of course, without hurting or violating anyone else's freedom.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's a really important point because sometimes, on the other hand, because of course we need to be free, and our democratic values are really important. Our freedom to be whoever we want to be, and gender-wise, sexual orientation-wise, everything, all these matters. But sometimes people forget that when you live in a society, that is the case of everyone, because nobody lives alone in the forest.
Yeah.
Freedom is always as limits. It's like sometimes people want to think about freedom as it is like limitless. No, if you live in a society, so freedom of speech is important to have some limits that are already in the law. Like you cannot say racist stuff or homophobic stuff, and sometimes people use this argument, oh no, this is just freedom of speech. No, that's hate speech. That's freedom of speech. So I really value, of course, a lot, freedom of speech, because it is my job. Even not as a person, but as a professional, it's my job, and to do jokes about whatever I want. I understand that, but on the other hand, there's a lot of people that tries to forge this concept of limitless freedom that is so wide that it's really important, because on the same time this is the same kind of people that are struggling, are trying to cut some freedoms, like, and we can see in some countries like Poland, Hungary, or even now in Spain, that Spain just here, because Vox, the far right party, just forbid could, in a small region, they could forbid a book that is a kid with two fathers. So it's really important to understand this big discussion that we're having about freedom of speech, that has these two sides that are really concerning.
Yes, I was actually thinking about that, the limits, and I think it's much about self-knowledge too, so that you know what are your limits and that you can communicate to others what are your limits in what concerns to speech freedom. So for me, it's okay if people make fun about things I have that I don't like so much, and for other people, maybe it's not all right. So it's about limits and that you can communicate them to other people. But at the same time, I think it depends on the context. And
Of course.
we talk about a lot about that to our participants. It's the same about their behavior. If they are in a classroom, they have to behave in one way. If they are in a garden, they can run, they can jump, they can do whatever they want, they can have a lot of energy. And for me, similar. If I go to a comedy club, for example, I know I will listen to racist jokes or homophobic jokes, but I know I'm in that context, and I know I'm prepared to go and listen to that. So for me, it's okay. And I know, like in our association, we always try to make fun of everything in order to take the heavy, meaning of that words. And so, for example, kids tend to call me transparent because I'm so white. And so they say I'm almost transparent. And for example, if something disappears, we say, oh, it was the gypsy, it was the black one, because we are like a big family. So we use this kind of humor just to not give value to
But
this
don't
kind
you
of
think
things.
if
But it's
it's-
because we are in this
Yes,
context.
because outside of your family, that could be really harmful because you're just continue the prejudice against gypsy and black people, right?
Exactly, but over there we know that is not with that intention.
Of course.
And then, for example, Marinho, which is a kid you have been with, normally we have like a private joke because we did like a campaign that it was called Cut the Prejudice. It was like a big campaign watched for more than 500,000 people. It was a campaign against discrimination to Roma people. And it was called Cut Prejudice, like I said, and we had like this scissor where they would cut the prejudice, and so we have like a private joke that when we make fun of Roma people, he will go and he will say, cut the prejudice. And so this kind of humor, I think it's also good that we can go into it, but that's the thing, we need to know the limits, we need to know where we are, we need to know what kind of people are we dealing with, because of course I will not do this with a young child that can't understand ironic things or the kind of humor I'm doing. I'm doing this with people I know I have the confidence to do this, and they are doing the same to me. So that's why I think social emotional skills are very important, self-knowledge and social knowledge, critical thinking, in order for them to understand what is the world and what they are able to do and not to do to hurt or not to hurt people, of course.
I think nowadays we are living in a time where people, often with some very controversial political views, shield themselves behind the idea of freedom of speech and freedom of expression in order to think that they can say whatever they want to say, attacking minorities, ethnic minorities, gender equality.
That goes exactly what you were saying before, because these kind of people that use, I'm just using my freedom of expression, but they don't let people be whatever they want, and to use their own freedom of expression to dress as they want and to be what they want.
And the thing is, not to be confused opinion with human rights. If your opinion violates a basic human right, it's not an opinion, it's oppression.
Exactly.
And it doesn't. You can't shield yourself behind, I'm just saying what I think, this is my opinion, I'm free to do that because of freedom of speech.
Yeah.
If you're actively oppressing someone else, or
It's
the
hate
way they live,
speech.
or
Yes.
it's hate speech, it's like Diogo
Yeah.
was saying. And that's something that nowadays has been very frequent, and we have many cases where we see that. A few days ago I saw this news about a book that was launched, and a bunch of people just showed up
Here in Portugal, yes.
Yeah, in Portugal, and they shield themselves and they continuously say, I'm just saying what I think, leave kids alone,
but
and
they were trying to silence people.
Exactly,
They were trying to
exactly.
silence the authors of a book that is just about happiness and love and everything.
And they are
Yes.
not allowing kids to develop their skills and their critical thinking. They will just be like like them, right? They will only
Yeah.
see it this way because of that. And I was also thinking, there was one thing that I always asked, that was, why do the state has the right to forbid or not to forbid someone to marry? Why? Why is the state deciding? Well,
Yeah.
of course, not with animals or things like that. But between people that are not related, why? Why can't a man marry a man, a woman marry a
But
woman,
do
or
you know-
whatever it
you
is?
know
What
that-
is
that
that's
was-
not the state.
Yeah, but that
Paper.
that was just the question that Isabel Moreira, the deputy feminist and really strong defensor of the LGBT rights, she asked herself few years ago, why can I be married with a man and my friend is a man then cannot be married with a man? And she was one of the most important people to draw the law that now we have to gay people to get married. And it started just like with that question.
the
It's not fair that the state is just regulating who can I marry to.
Exactly. What are their rights? Of course, we are talking about people over 18. I'm not talking about like under 18 or
we
anything like that,
we
but
understood that.
consent.
over 18
Okay.
and
Yeah.
with consent,
it's
I don't
present.
even
Yeah.
understand why the state has anything to do with that. For me, it doesn't make any sense, and it's also cutting the freedom of
Yeah.
expression, the freedom of living.
I think that there are historical backgrounds here that are still very present nowadays, and that makes it all more difficult because the ideas, the concepts, society itself, it evolves, but then we are also very like the roots of the older systems,
tradition.
the traditional system, and in fact nowadays we can see, okay, it doesn't make sense. Okay, we should be free to do whatever we like if we are not hurting anyone else directly, if the way we live is not in any way putting anyone in some more difficult situation, then what's the big deal about it? And that's something that it is more difficult to comprehend by the ones who are in power, maybe because they're also from older generations. They are still very attached to the old ways of living, and that's just something. I've been watching a Portuguese series called Conta-me Como Foi, and it struck me the way that things were not so long ago. Portugal is now free of oppression, at least in the sense that who is governing us is not fascist or anything. But it wasn't that long ago that freedom of speech was at risk, and not at risk, just non-existent actually. And to be confronted with the threat of those times coming back is actually really scary. Okay, it's something that
We can
frightens
we can never take human rights for granted
yeah
in Portugal or wherever. We just can't, and that's the present menace of cutting our freedom of speech. Yeah, like we were saying about Hungary, Poland, even in the United States, they're just forbidding a lot of books that talk about LGBT rights, anti-racism books, everything. So in the United States, land of the free.
yeah
Land of the free for who, right? So yeah, we really cannot take our rights or human rights as freedom of expression.
It would be good if we could just like take a deep breath and be very tranquilized,
Relaxed, yeah.
relaxed with
Yeah, we can't.
oh, we can breathe now, it's okay. But it's not, it's like always lurking nearby, and you just can't put your arms down when it comes to freedom of speech, expression, human rights, because there's always someone ready to just jump at the opportunity to.
But that's why the kind of work that you do and this youth center does is so important, to empower people, to empower young kids to understand their rights, to understand the importance of human rights. So that's really important. There's a lot of ways to fight fascism and to fight conservatism and everything, and you can be in the parliament, or you can be working with young kids and
Yeah.
and forming young kids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the
and
more we are in contact with different countries and with different perspectives of reality, the easier it is to comprehend also our level on an international scale, because we've spoken here about several countries who don't have this kind of freedom of speech and freedom of being, and LGBT communities being persecuted and not being able to freely express themselves. And so this is actually really important to happen, these kind of conversations, these kind of initiatives that involve different countries with different...
Yeah, in the end, I think it's all about respect and acceptance and what the hell do we have to do with the other one's lives? That's the thing. I can't even understand. And you were saying about other countries. When I went to Berlin, I think I saw a little bit of that, the respect that everyone has to the others. If people want to be without shoes in the street, they are without shoes. If they want to dance, they are dancing. If they want to be playing music, they are playing music, without any logic, like nonsense thing. And I was just, this is a kind of world I want to live in, where I can do wherever I want without harming others, of course. But yes, but not being judged by others. And I think another topic I would like to bring before going to others. Another topic I would like to bring is like the discrimination that now we have, that it's not like a obvious discrimination, but it's like a hidden discrimination. And I think nowadays that is one of the main problems we have. And that really put people in a difficult place because, for example, to get employment, to get a house, they have to pretend they are not Roma people. They have to pretend they don't live in that neighborhood. Sometimes they say, so where are you from? Instead of saying Monte da Caparica, they say like Almada in general, because if they say Monte da Caparica, probably they won't get the job. So this is a kind of discrimination that makes that you don't have your speech freedom, because you can't say who you are, you can't say where you are from, you can't say who you really are. And for me, that's a topic that needs to be discussed, because it's even more it's more hidden, and sometimes it affects more people than the discrimination that everyone sees, because this is really an interior thing.
Yeah,
it's a
that's
thing that hurts
what
you.
it's called, systemic racism. That happens for years and years. It can be to Roma people, Brazilians, black people.
Exactly.
But it's a fact. It's much harder for them to get a job, to get a house. And yes, it's a huge part of the discrimination, because fortunately it's kind of more rare to listen out loud the really racist thing, but the same person that is not, she's embarrassed to vocalize her racism, probably she won't rent a house for black people or Roma people.
And
that's huge.
inclusion,
That's huge.
Sorry, in inclusion, it's mainly about education, job, and house, right? And if you don't have those three, you are not included. So
of course,
there are a lot of testimonies of people who are Brazilian in Portugal, Brazilian people who had to ask a Portuguese friend to rent a house
with Roma people.
And it just doesn't make sense to put people in the same box just because you. And sometimes there isn't even a previous experience, a bad experience that justifies a lot of.
It's just a prejudice.
It's
and
just
stereotypes.
And it's something that should stop.
But I think talking about this prejudice and stereotypes and discrimination, I think we also should focus a little bit on what is being done again to fight against this reality. And we have, I think, great examples like Erasmus Plus programs, projects that are being done in order to, for example, there were a project called No Hate Speech that was also related to the youth center. And I think this kind of projects are giving young people the opportunity for them to understand what is freedom of speech and for them to disseminate to the others the same. Here in the youth center, we already had a lot of experiences for our young people where they come, they do activities, they have some theoretical parts that they don't like that much, but okay, they also need to have that part. And they really learn in a dynamic way with active methods how they can fight against this oppression. So it's so good to have projects that are fighting this, and I don't know if you can also give some examples of projects you have been involved in,
Okay.
or
Well,
that you know.
I think that any chance you have to travel and to go abroad, whether it's in a project, whether it's in your own personal interest, it's always positive because you can only perceive any other person or form an opinion about anyone else, regardless of their nationality, ethnicity, whatever, if you get to know them. And I usually go around my life and live my life perceiving people, as human beings who have specific characteristics and who don't have to fit the box of their nationality or the box of their ethnicity or their religion. They're people, they're a whole being, and they should be perceived like that. And then you can understand if you agree, if you don't agree. But if you agree with things that are agreeable, not if you agree that that person, if you don't agree with the fact that the person is LGBT, or if the person that's not something that you can agree or not agree on. That's just that's the person, okay?
Exactly.
And that's what you have to. I'm not even going to say accept, because the person shouldn't also be dependent on
Acceptance
It's
of
not
the
a
other.
right
yeah,
to accept
the
or
acceptance
not.
of others. It's
Yes.
just it is what it is. The same way you are what you are.
Exactly.
But that cannot be an excuse to also tolerate the intolerance, which is something that sometimes happens. You can't just, it's like you said, there are limits. So you can't just, if I meet someone who has fascist ideals, I'm not just going to accept because I have to accept everyone the way
Yeah,
they
yeah.
are, because they're not accepting others as well. So that's where the line is drawn. That's where it stops. And I think that's something that it's
Well, I
it's
think
important.
if they have ideals that are fascists, but they are not doing anything against people, for me it's okay. They can think whatever they want if they are not doing
The thing
anything to harm people. They are just harming themselves for having some stupid opinions. Sorry about the word.
but the thing is, can you really have those opinions? Do you actually believe that someone who has those opinions won't let them out in any way, in any context?
Well, they
Yeah.
can discuss them in a proper way. If they discuss them in a proper way, for me that's okay.
Oh, that's what you were saying.
Because
like,
they also have the freedom
hate
to do
speech
that.
is not opinions. Like, if they're saying that black people is this, or Jews are this, or LGBT people are this is bad things, you know.
No,
Yeah,
of
this-
course,
yeah.
of course.
When I say this, just I don't want to say
Of
bad
course.
things. This is not just opinions. These are words that harm people, and the construction of the thinking is made of words, right? Not just actions. You don't need to be punching people
Yeah.
to be harming society as a whole. And so
Yeah.
that's why, this question of freedom of expression, freedom of speech is really important. But yes, it has limits, because hate speech is not freedom of expression.
Yeah, I think we have almost to terminate. Maybe I will just do a small thing that it's also the opportunity, at least in my association, we had a lot of opportunities to talk directly to politics. Also because of the East Portuguese Institute of Youth and Sports. It's a very hard word to say. And I think that's also a way of freedom of speech. And that's very important, to have the opportunity to talk to the ones in power. And our young people, for example, they had a lot of opportunities to talk, for example, to the Minister of Work, to the Minister of, to the Secretary of State of Youth, and they felt valorized, they felt that their opinion mattered, and they really said, we want this, and we want this. And I think that's also important. Of course, then it has to happen. That's the second point. We won't have time to discuss that now. But I think it's very important for them to have that kind of freedom of expression. So I would like also to thank to the Youth Center and to the Portuguese Institute of Youth and Sports to give the opportunities of to the association, and mainly to young people, to be in direct contact with the politics and the people in power, to be able to express their opinions to them. And I don't know, Filipa, if you want to terminate for me.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the end. Just maybe leave a reminder that the 10th of December is the International Human Rights Day, and it will be the day that we will launch this podcast. So yeah, for me, thank you for sharing your views and perspectives. It was actually really interesting and positive, I think, and I hope that those who are listening, watching us at home feel the same. And yeah,
that this can be a good starting point for the other people that are watching to speak between themselves and to discover what is the limits of freedom of expression, of the importance of the freedom of expression.
Maybe we can leave just a message, each one of us, like a
sure.
This was my message. This was already my message.
I can only say that as human beings, we are always evolving, and there is no shame in recognizing our flaws. And if you recognize that in some point of your life you have been, I don't know, maybe not so correct to someone else based on some of these prejudices that sometimes are hard to fight because, like we were saying, they have so deep roots in society, maybe, that this would be a chance to work on yourself and improve.
I subscribe that.
Yeah.
I would say fight every day to create a better world and to empower communities. And I think in that way we will have freedom of speech for sure.
Yes, I agree with both of you, so it's fine. I subscribe those ideas.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you
both.